Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Sorry we're a little bit late here. That was my fault. I was talking to Jim before the show, but we finally got it going. And today you just got me, Cardinal Electric Head, and we got Frater Jin with us. And we will be talking about the supernal triad in the Kabbalah. Jin, in case people don't know who you are yet, which I'm sure they do know, please let everybody know what is up with Jin the Ninja.
Well, thank you, Electric Cardinal. Appreciate that, Mr. 93. So I am Jin the Ninja, host a show called Threshold Saints. It's a show about meta magic, speculative ontologies, and also we'll say vice president or co-president of the Grey Lodge, which now has a YouTube channel. And we are in the midst of doing some really interesting speculative archaeology series. So that will be Friday live. We're doing a roundtable on speculative archaeologies of the New World, so America. So everybody brings their weirdest, craziest conspiracy theory, and they tell us what it is about America. So should be cool.
And that is in your spaces?
Yeah, so everybody can follow me or any of the other co-hosts at Wukong Reborn. You'll see I post the posters all the time, or at Threshold Saints, which is the show account, and that's also the account on IG. And I also post the spaces and the posters to that. And so I'll have an episode with Simon from Brahmastra, who I met through you, Nick. He's a great dude. And so I have an episode with him coming out, and also an episode with Ashley from Union of Unknowns, Think, Change, Repeat. So look forward to that. And I've got so much coming up. I'm a little behind this week, but yeah, it's rocking and rolling. And I appreciate you inviting me to be here. I love talking about Kabbalah. It's been something that, it's definitely been a part of my Twitter presence, personality, and also a big part of my show. And I've always said a big part of that is from you, and how you were an early sort of just interlocutor of Kabbalah in the occult podcasting sphere. Like nobody really discussed it the way you did. And so when you did, I was like, yes, this is like someone who has understanding. This is someone who has gone up the tree. And from those experiences, I was like, oh, I actually have gone up. I didn't really realize it, Nick. I'm just being honest at first. I knew I had, but it didn't have boundaries. Maybe it wasn't cohesive, like the memories of it.
Gotcha.
So then studying the tree and studying the Jewish Kabbalists, it gave me a lot better grasp of what I experienced, what I saw, and how to sort of understand it. And then, but I just want to say, I've always said this, is that listening to you on some of your old series, Scarlet Woman #1, obviously, that really helped me. So it's really interesting to do this full circle. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, awesome. No, thank you. That's great that you even said all that. I really appreciate that. And the Scarlet Woman is another series that, I mean, technically I already did the Kabbalah a while back ago with Lux, and I wanted to redo it with you. Even the Scarlet Horse series is something that I've thought about redoing. So, maybe we could all be a part of that again in the future at some point. Because I even would say, just from my own experiences and learning, I mean, that was 3 years ago when I probably did the Scarlet Horror or the other thing. I mean, I've learned and grown even from there. So be a totally different look at it again.
So what you said, I think, is super important, just to lay the foundation of what I'm going to talk about, at least, but probably also what you're going to talk about, is that your perspective does change. And my perspective has also changed. So I've done the Kabbalah and Tantra series with you. That's 6.5 hours of straight up, serious Kabbalah Tantra discussion. I did the 11-part series with Lee. That was obviously how I started podcasting. And so that was also having Sephardic kind of experiences as I recorded, as you've discussed when doing Scarlet Horror. So I've had that where you've recorded, but I wasn't totally aware, let's say. I was kind of yeah, they were magical experiences and I was having them, but I wasn't totally aware that I was having them. It was more, I would listen back in recording and be like, oh, I actually understand 100% what I was talking about. I can see it in my mind's eye. So I get it. Your perspective changes, and the tree should change. It should be very dynamic. It should not, I think, this is just me, Jen, but I think it should be dynamic, and I think it shouldn't be so fixed. And I think when we're talking about supernal triad, Saturn and Binah, that is fixed. But maybe the Kether and Chockmah are not necessarily malleable, but they're more unfixed. They're more maybe clockwork. Maybe they can, change position. So I think it's an interesting idea. At least keep in mind that it can be flexible, and different people have different ways to describe it. That's super important too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, even just when you did the Tantra series, just like the art that you even showed, something completely different than I would most people would even be used to in occultism, in my opinion. So even it was just it's interesting to see how it was, how it's looked at or presented in other ways.
So that's the whole thing, is that I think even with like we did the show with Mario the other day, and it like dawned on me that all of us sort of recognize, at least in our own kind of languages, that maybe there is a kind of, well, there's different ways to describe it. Maybe you say primordial, maybe you say perennial. I saw Solar in the chat, so I'll shout him out. We had a discussion about traditionalism versus primordialism in his episode on Evola, so it's really interesting, actually. But yeah, I think that that was what I came to, that understanding when we were on the roundtable, is that, yeah, we kind of all recognize that maybe there is a, I'm going to use a very Talemic term, aeonic shift. And yeah, and so I think that we kind of have to also acknowledge that maybe Kabbalah exists in that kind of shifting landscape of how we perceive the world, rather than saying it's fixed. Like, I know a lot of people, especially when I first started doing the spaces and discussing it, like you were kind of like a maverick and just doing it on your show. Whereas I had to I kind of did in my own way, translate that into Twitter.
Yeah.
So I would talk about it and people were like very resistant, because it was like, oh, you're associated with the Jays and this. And then I quickly made friends with Sachki. I've brought him up many times on the show. He's obviously been on my show a few times. And he introduced me to this idea of using Sailor Moon to discuss Kabbalah. And honestly, it was as important for me to have that connection, and shout out Sachki, as it was for me to listen to you, to become like, I don't know if I'm like a mediocre podcaster or whatever now, but it has helped me so much. Like that idea that I could translate Kabbalah or Tantra, because maybe those are the same thing. I've said this before. Um, Maybe you can translate that into pop culture, but also maybe pop culture is also relaying those kinds of Sephardic ideas.
Mm.
So that made it a lot more easier for me to start speaking about it more openly, instead of being like, oh, this is like the for an audience of magicians. Like
Yeah.
people weren't, people are normie. So they, and I don't mean that in a pejorative, they just couldn't instantly recognize, like when I would drop Kabbalistic language, or
Oh,
try.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I started incorporating these kinds of more, people love to discuss it in context to anime, especially, or people seem to give me the most feedback when I do that. And so I just, yeah, that has helped me a lot. And so people think that you have to be some great magician to and study Kabbalah for 50 years. And maybe that's true. And I agree that the sages were very extremely, like, they were magicians. They were like riding the dragon, as Nick likes to say. Like they were
Mm.
going all the way. And you can hear it. You can read. I'm a big fan of Rabbi Cordovero Ramak, and his book, The Orchard of Pomegranates. Or yeah, Orchard of Pomegranates, I believe. I might be mixing up with the Israel
Oh,
Regarding.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, wait, was that Israel regarding you wrote the
Well, there, one is the Garden of Pomegranates and one is the
Yes.
Orchard. So I always forget. And my Hebrew is very bad, as everybody knows who's come to the spaces. So I'm not going to pretend. But it was a really foundational, really important book. I bought them off eBay. Cost like 900 bucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
13 volumes in English. And so as I was doing a Tantra series, I read through them, and then in preparation to come on and do it with you. So I was like, yeah, this is really interesting. And so how can we bring this like medieval knowledge and update it? Sort of, I know I rambled for a really long time. I'm sorry, Nick,
No, go for it.
but I wanted to bring it into 2025 and like let people know that it's out there. Like it's not just in those books. Like you don't have to buy books from eBay or A Books or whatever, like an antiquarian book dealer. It's actually there, and it's actually somewhat preserved and somewhat understandable. And so I always found that really interesting. Just that's sort of been my Kabbalah evolution, is how I would say. It's like started from a very traditionalist kind of perspective. Like, yes, we have to not talk about this thing in Buddhism or this thing in Tantra, but we're going to try and present it in like a very traditional, very middle pillar way. And I still try and do that. But I realize in 2025, again, it is, you have to kind of update for your audience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I even think with Kabbalah, it's like even hard. It's like, where do I even start to try to explain this to people who don't understand anything? You know, then, or it's like, there's even been times in the past where I didn't want to touch it because I was like too worried about like, oh, other people are going to like think I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And then it's like, I'm not to sound like an asshole, but it's like, I mean, all right, I'm kind of like half in the conspiracy world and half in the occult world. And like, not for nothing, the conspiracy world, they know jack shit about fucking Kabbalah, so I should be intimidated. And then half the people that are in the occult fucking community know jack shit about Kabbalah anyway. So why the fuck should I be intimidated? You know, if anything, I just gotta be worried about my listeners understanding what the fuck I'm even saying.
Okay, well, this was even the genesis of the Gray Lodge, was I needed to be able to speak about it in the way that you spoke about it. I needed to be free and open in my expression of it, especially when I was really deep in. And so there was a group of people interested in these kinds of crazy ideas that I would spin sometimes, or weave, as Joshua the Branch likes to say. Um, and so that's basically what it was. I was like, I have to actually, it's like solar is high level, and but maybe not, wasn't quite where I was at that moment. But the rest of them, it's not that they were bad, but I had to kind of bring them up in understanding. That's how I felt. And so that was how I started. It was like, I need to be able to relay it in a way that makes sense. So that's what I tried to do. So I totally relate to what you're saying. It's like so many people in the occult world, they will say they do not know Kabbalah. I know you had a guest on, a very important guest, who said that he didn't. Whether I believe that or not is irrelevant, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's 100% true. And because for me, Kabbalah is like a foundational map to explain sort of all metaphysics. You can
I'll even
map
put it
things
this way.
onto. Sorry, Jay. Sorry, Nick.
Oh yeah, just real quick to interrupt you. Sorry. I'll even put it this way: if you go to a lodge or a place that has a checkerboard floor, it's attached to Kabbalah. So that's my opinion.
I agree. I think it's that
Go ahead.
simple.
Yeah,
No,
yes. I just wanted to add that.
I think you can map all systems to the tree, and I think you can also look at the tree in order to reach different conclusions. Like people are very familiar with Hegel and the Hegelian dialectic, like that. Yes, that is Kabbalah. That's Kabbalah. He's a very good Kabbalist. It doesn't mean I agree with him. I don't agree with every sage master, modern American magician. I don't agree with all many of them, but that's okay. I can still use some of the things they say and sort of, it helps refine my perspective, is what I would say. So a lot of these things that like conspiracy people do talk about are Kabbalistic. They may not know. A lot of them probably don't know.
Yes, yes, yes. I would agree with that. And you know what's another thing too? I think you had mentioned earlier, and I just throw this out there, and it's probably like preaching to the choir. Like nobody really that listens to our shows probably need to hear this, but like you also get a lot of people who discredit this shit because they just hate fucking Jewish people, and it's like,
So
well,
this
you
is,
don't
yeah.
understand what the supposed bad guys are doing to you. Don't you want to fucking understand? It's just I don't know. Like they'll discredit it, saying, "Oh, it's a satanic Jewish shit." It's like, oh, okay, that's all it is. It's just it's not all dicks and demons,
So this is something, Nick, that I've personally encountered many times, especially with my own show and also Twitter. Not to reference and be like a very online person, but I just think it's important, like what you just said. Just because something has an origin, those people actually are very good Kabbalists. You want to talk about people who are very excellent Kabbalists? Jewish people are actually quite good Kabbalists. And so it's okay to learn from people who actually understand maybe deeper things. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them politically, or you know uh, it doesn't mean anything. That's what I'm saying. So I personally think that they are good Kabbalists, so I'm going to read their texts. But I agree with you that often the knowledge of Kabbalah does get maybe intentionally hidden under this kind of label of aspersion, or which is a Kabbalistic act to accuse like something of being satanic of that which you also are.
Mm.
It's actually the klipa of Gevurah. I know we're not talking about Gevurah today, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
So,
it is an interesting like Kabbalistic note. Is that yeah, absolutely to so don't discard things. I don't think it's useful. I think you have to. That's what wisdom science is, right? Like explore it, test it for yourself.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. But I mean, I guess we'll get into it if that's okay with you. We'll start off with Kath.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We did a long. I know.
No,
It
no,
was
that's
my
totally
fault. I
fine.
did a long intro.
No, no, that was totally fine, dude. We're good. We're good. Like I said, if this takes too long, we'll just do a part two, or just leave whatever and just cover it in the next one. Because that is the point of hopefully of this, is that we will actually do the whole tree. It's just that I was telling Jen, I was like, I really don't think we could do the whole tree in one episode and do it justice. So maybe we'll do the Supernal Triad first. So
I think this makes a lot of sense. I think that because of like as I explained how I've come through like different understandings, maybe not even greater, but I think this is this is something that Nick and I used to kind of bicker, not bicker, but in a funny way. That Nick would always talk about descending the tree, and I would always talk about ascending the tree. And so, but now I'm actually ready because it took me a long time to sort of accept the descending directionality, but now I'm actually okay with it. I've sort of like reconciled that paradox. So I think it's perfect timing for us to do this supernal triad.
good. Good for you. Yeah, so I guess Kether, I don't know. I guess if you want to start off with that, maybe how you look at it, and then I'll go, whatever. I know you also have videos too. So I'm not sure how you wanted to start it off. Not to put pressure on you.
No, Kether. Okay, so let's talk about Kether. It's love. It's white. That's usually how it's considered. But it can actually have two other primary colors. Now, Dion Fortune talks about like the gold flashing in the Asya, the lower world component. That's okay. Yes, I agree with that. I do agree with that. But I actually think that there is a pink component, and that is why that shows up in Tiferet and also in
Yes,
Wrath.
yes, yes. That is interesting.
So that's my slight difference in interpretation, and it does make sense in a tantric way, which I won't get into. But it there is something there. I think that you can make an argument for that, and so and people tend to although also overemphasize the gold elements. I've noticed this a lot. Like modern magicians, modern Kabbalists, when they're talking about Keter, they tend to overemphasize that. But I think it's important to say that it's beyond materiality. So it's the you could say it's the breath of God, even the
Yeah,
expression into the world.
I think it's very well said.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's like it's so pristine, it's so infinite, it's so powerful, and it's potential that it's sort of ineffable in a way. And I know
Yes.
that other Kabbalists like to say, like, oh, Ein Sof, Ein Sof 4. Those are really getting more into the ineffable. But I like to say that Kether is at least the point of like ineffable sort of realization.
Yeah, some people say it's like the primordial point of like creation in a
I agree
sense.
with that. That makes sense to me in a tantric way. The goddess who I placed there in our series that I did up with you, I said is Chinnamasta. So she is the goddess of both creation and destruction at the same time, a paradox.
That's interesting. Just to throw this in there, and, again, not saying that the guy was onto anything. I'll just toss it in there. But even Crowley, he looked at, I think, as Pan as being associated with Kether and Earth, or Kether and Malkuth, saying that it's like, I mean, if you look at the tree, I mean, it all comes from Kether anyway. So if you consider that, I guess, like God or whatever you want to look at it, it's in every sphere, regardless. But I do find kind of like what you had just said. I do find that interesting. It's almost maybe the same idea.
So I have to say I agree with Crowley in this instance, and I also agree with what you said. Is like there is so it depends. So every Sephira you could say has 5 densities or 7. You've talked about this many times, and I've talked about it quite a few times as well. But different systems have different preferences. So I agree with though that idea of the 5 density system is just an easier way to sort of reconcile the numerical issues that arise with seven, and not that seven's an imperfect number, but you get it's you're supposed to be clean. It's just everything's just it's very autistic, right? So you want it to all be clean numbers, clean names of God, whatever. So the fifth density is really Dath as well. That's how originally in like the older Kabbalah they would understand. Dath is in every sphere, and it's at that fifth density, and it's that sort of crystalline blue color. So I agree that it's there. It's not necessarily its own separate sephira, but for counting purposes, it can be really useful to have it appear on the tree. And I think that you do experience it. I think it's a lot to do with our consciousness too.
Mm.
So I think that that's why I like to place it in the fifth density, and I think that it's just a neater, tidier system. But of course, some people do teach the seven density method, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I mean, even for people who may not know, like even on the, you mentioned it before with the colors. How's there's the oh god, was it oh, what's the first one in the four densities of the spheres with the colors? I know it goes A B Y A. That's how I remember it. Saya, or is it and then there's Bria, and then Yetzira, and then
Mhm.
whatever. I always get those two confused. I mean, even right there, that shows that there's at least, I mean, there's four different colors, or I guess ideas of each sphere to begin with. Just just looking at a Kabbalistic map, you'll see that on some of them. So I mean, just right there, it shows that there's different densities or ideas. I've even wondered because of that, and it's getting a little bit off, on the rest of the tree, but when you start getting into the whole color aspect, is there like four different like densities or whatever to like kind of show the whole frequency change into going into something else, into a different color? I know that sounds weird, but something with that. I think the densities. It's more of like maybe somewhat of like the path going between each sphere. I wonder if that has something to do with it, like the change and be from one thing to the next.
So I think this makes a lot of sense. I think this a lot of makes a lot of sense experientially, and I also think it makes sense in the more medieval Kabbalah. I think this is what Ramek would argue is that the paths are found in the Sephira through the experiences. So
Yeah,
exactly what Nick's saying is like, yeah, I would agree with that too. Rather than they just appear there, no, I think it actually has a lot more to do with our consciousness, how we perceive and also control what is happening.
I sometimes look at the past as almost like the alchemy between the spheres.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. You can look at there's some Jewish texts that show like the letters traveling through the Sephira, like through the density of the four worlds, like Nick was talking about. And so the paths really represent like the aggregates of like you need a vessel to contain something. And so the word is can be a letter, but it can also be light and it can also be sound. But you need a vessel to sort of travel through from one Sephira to the next. So later on, they started mapping the letters directly onto the paths, but that's not really how it was originally understood. It's really about light traveling through the paths, not really focusing on the paths. But that's a more hermetic exercise, right? It's very Hode like to say, oh, I want to understand this thing that I'm seeing, this thing that I'm creating.
I agree with that. Uh, Kether, there was some things that I just before you go on. See, I was when you mentioned the crown, not the crown. We were talking about gold before, and Kether is considered, I think, Hebrew for crown. So, like, even that
Mhm.
whole, like, I guess you're talking about like the gold flecked in there or whatever the gold is. I think is mixed in with Kether and like one of the things. I even wondered like if that is even kind of why they even call it crown in a sense because there is gold flecked in there. I don't know, like how you were saying that people consider when they go on about the gold with Kether. I think maybe that might have something to do with it, maybe. But um, even Kether, I know has also. Have you ever like came across where they try to explain it as like a crystallization?
So this is really interesting that you bring this up, Nick, because in Tantra, we would describe that as adamantine, which can mean diamond thunder. So, like a sort of compressive process. I'm not. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not Ricardo, so this is like this natural
Okay.
philosophy stuff is
Okay.
well beyond me. But it's a adamantizing process between lightning and like meteorite iron or other alchemical metals, specifically with metal, but with metal and lightning. And it's also about pressure. So sometimes they'll make like a golden furnace. This is very common in Taoism, or like in Tibet, they use like a cremation furnace or whatever. So yes, I agree that the goddess who goes there, she wears a crown said to be of adamantine. So the idea is the flashing of gold isn't really gold. It's actually like the color of stainlessness. That's how it's more described in a tantric way. But it is flashing metallic, but it's not necessarily gold. It's more pristine. It's more like white. But there is something just like with light. If you've ever seen a Chambara movie, this is a great a metaphor for this. Is when they do the shot where the samurai holds his sword and the sword kind of flashes in the like moonlight or in the diegetic lighting, like in the camera lighting. That's the same. That's kind of the idea for me. I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
You know what? I started thinking about. I unfortunately got sidetracked and started thinking about Mother with the whole crystal thing. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, how they actually have the crystal in there. And I started thinking about that.
No, it makes sense, right? Because that
Yeah,
is kind of the idea. It is like diamond. It's like the transmutation from diamond into thunder. Like it's very like Hod Netzach, but at the highest order, you could say. And maybe that is what Kether is
Thunder's
also.
trying to get.
Like you could say it's an expression of all those dialectical interactions, those like the paths between the Sephira that's expressed at Kether. That's how I always used to see it. Now, as I said, I'm more now I'm comfortable going down the tree as well. But
Yeah.
I think if you look at it from looking upwards, which is the inverse to the Hebrew way. So the Hebrew way is you lower your crown, your actual head, in submission to receive the knowledge or to receive God's love. In Tantra, it's completely the opposite. It's looking up at the crown in
Mm,
defiance.
I like that. One thing I even find interesting with the whole like crystal, like using crystal kind of as like a, a way to explain it. You're gonna get all those colors emanating from it. Like you get that with crystals anyway. The colors in there when you shine light into it. So I mean, it's kind of interesting to think about.
No, this is a great kind of segue, I guess, into something Vanessa said. So she said, "Do you think it takes death, the combination of both, to reach Kether?" And so different people have different ideas of this. Kenneth Grant would have said, if you go to death, you can go all the way. Like you're gone, like you're out of you're out of the black cube matrix or whatever.
I can see
Some
that.
people say, I could see that too. And it does actually make sense. And so I'm okay with that. Some people say that if you go to Kether, you don't need to go outside because that is outside. It's like the sort of like we're coming back, falling back down, but we carry the experience with us, or people who have been up there. So or some people have said that it can be like a Tracy Twyman, and we'll shout out Lisa, obviously, is like the world archipelago, the hyperspace kingdom. It's like that. It was Tracy's idea. It was like the trans-Uranian. And so we'll talk about this a little later when we show the Sailor Moon videos. But there's an idea that maybe Kether and Uranus, obviously the planets are the least density, maybe not even among the four. Maybe they're the Klopothic density. That's an interesting way of sort of been exploring, thinking about it, like NASA space Kabbalah, quote unquote. Just an idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But because they are aggregates, like planets are physical aggregates. They're physical beings. Sephira are empty space or negative space, excuse me. So what is the inverse of negative space? Is something physical, dense, made of stone and ice.
Stone and ice. Well, one thing I did want to even throw in there too, before we start, I mean, sure, we'll get into some of the other associations, but even the God name for this is Aheye, which is mean I am. That's kind of like a reflects pure essence and existence, and divine being. And I even like wonder, like, Kether, it does get the number one with it. So I do wonder about like, technically, that's like, I don't know if like you've heard kind of Mario go on with the poles and holes. But
Mhm,
it's like kind of
mhm,
giving that
mhm.
sphere number one is a pole in the hole. Like,
Well, okay, so it's really interesting because in as I said in tantra, there's the goddess is the goddess of paradox. So she's actually standing upon a copulating couple if you look at the iconography. And you can also say in a Buddhist way, so this is a more Buddhist understanding, not a Indian tantric understanding, but she's standing on herself. So it is very much like you are saying, and like Brent is saying, once you're at Kether, you're back at Malkuth. Exactly. It is kind of the hyperspace kingdom. And I agree with what Solar said. Going to Dot is like walking up to a mirror on clear light consciousness. It's kind of a travesty as a fixed place. I agree. So it's like, but you have to reconcile both experiences, right? It can't just be like you can't just focus primacy on Dath or primacy on Kether. Obviously, Kether is the one, but as Brent said, it's also the 10. So, like when Mario's talking about that, for me, we reconcile it always with a male and a female polarity. That's how it always works. There's no real room for deviancy.
oh, you know
I'm
what's
not
really
saying this in like an edgelord way. I'm just that's how I think of it.
no, I get it. I get it. I mean, it is even interesting. I mean, again, I guess it would be an extra zero, but I mean, if you look at Kether, it's like one on his sphere, that's one and a zero, and then the reflection is Malkuth, which is the 10th sphere, which is another pole in a hole.
That's right.
Yeah. Now,
Well,
if you were to add, like, I guess another, whatever, it could be 100, but you know what I'm saying? It still has that. Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
absolutely. And it's also because the zero is what? It's a later addition from the Sanskrit text, and it's also a empty number. So very much there's something very Sephardic about a zero, just as it is. And it also is something very feminine about that, because as we've often said on the show, and again, shout out Lisa, but also all the times Nick's heard me say this, uh, women are less dense than men. They just are. So they're a little more Sephardic, you could say, by nature. That doesn't mean everyone. It just, as a rule, you could say, but rules are always meant to be broken. But yeah, no, I agree that zero is really important. I like to think of it as you've said this, and I was like, yeah, he gets it. There's both expressions in the tree and every Sephira. And I think that this is where a lot of magicians go wrong. They just focus on either what we would call like the Shakti or the female component. Obviously, this is a very powerful way to travel through the densities. But then some will only focus on like the male deities or this pantheon, or they'll mix it all together. And I don't always think that that's the most useful either. And I think it goes along with what we were saying about colors, like different densities. The deeper the density, yes, it should be more difficult and like emotionally, phenomenologically, but it also should be should be actually losing the preconceptions of before, like the kinds of like the husks, like my famous thing famous whatever that I said, like combusting the husks or breaking the husks, is that's what it is. That's what going through the densities. So you're kind of letting go of the preconceptions of before. So that's
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's really important to like think about with Dath, is that like it is about, yeah, it's an infinite place of Rigpa. It's an infinite place of like being uh expansive consciousness. It's not limited. And Kether isn't necessarily limited, but maybe Kether is reflexive.
Yeah. I would even say, even with Doth, sometimes through my experiences, I had contributed that a little bit too. You know how I've said, oh, like when you open up your eyes, you'll know shit you didn't know. I had even maybe attributed to that is that, like, that's your experience after coming back too. Is the wisdom or understand. I forgot what is associated with that again. Which what is Doth again? Because I know wisdom is Chokmah, understanding is Binah. What is knowledge? Doth.
Knowledge. Yeah,
Yeah.
with a K.
Or
Capital
knowing.
K.
I mean, if you see, then
Mhm.
again, for me, there was a lot of things that once I had in my experience, certain things weren't faiths anymore. They were knowings. So
That's
that's
right.
why I had like kind of got. I wondered if even Doth, applies to after the magician's made his journey and he's coming back.
I think it does personally. I think it exists. Like I think it's if for someone who's made the experience, I think to have Doth on the tree makes complete sense, and I would include it if I was like constructing my own.
Yeah.
But I think for beginners or like people just learning, I'm not sure that it's necessarily useful because then they look at it as like a place that you go rather than a place that you kind of come to through wisdom and understanding.
If you don't mind, I think I'll read off some of my associations here just to get the.
Absolutely.
I had mentioned before, again, the god name. Now, again, this goes to how Jim mentioned before. Each sphere has 4 densities. It normally goes like the god name for that sphere, then it will go archangel, and then an angelic order, and then like the mundane chakra or whatever. God name for this would be, again, I mentioned I am the archangel. I don't know if this was someone that you ever got into, but Metatron is associated with the with Kether. He kind of supposed to be like, Gareth Knight is somebody that him and Dion Fortune I would refer to sometimes when it comes to Kabbalistic stuff. Read both their books. Gareth Knight's I thought was better because he goes into the paths. It's a fucking gigantic book. And I mean, most people would say that. I mean, that Metatron presides over the whole tree of life as well as Kether because he's at the top. But that is technically kind of even like how I looked at it, like, the head motherfucker before you actually get to God. So
I think that that's a totally valid way to look at it. I think there is so when we did the Book of Enoch series, you, Robbie, and I, it dawned on me that they believe, at least the people who practice the Enochian stuff, that you too can be Enoch, like you too can be Metatron, you too can reach apotheosis. And of course, in magic, this is like a very common idea, right? But maybe it's not that spoken about in in polite circles that you can sort of reach apotheosis or transcend like your limitations. But I actually think that that's an interesting way to also look at Metatron. Is that like he is you, but not you of right now?
I actually, to be totally honest with you, when it comes to the tree of life, and I've even said this about certain gods, we're just like even in their stories. If you're going to go have a magical experience and there's certain things going on with you spiritually or even inside your body, you're going to become those characters. Like you will be Metatron before you cross the abyss. Like I think you do take on these aspects. It's just a way to describe it and to give it a name, but it is an experience that you'll have yourself. I think a lot.
I
So, like when
100%
you
agree.
say you can become Metatron, yeah, I think you do before you blast off. I even think
Well,
like even the whole thing, like if you think of like how kings, those are used a lot. How do they end up like? All right, I mean, you could become a king, but if you want to like, let's say you follow dies, you become king. If you want to go conquer another place, what do you have to do? You have to slay that motherfucker and take his shit. If you
well,
want to
that's
become
really
that, you have to kill it and become it. Like it's kind of how I get into like my whole thing with like using Michael Myers as the beast. That motherfucker's slaying everything in his world, and then you'll become it. In a sense, you'll become the king. You took over. You've killed everything else. So it's like in a sense, like are you killing Metatron and becoming him?
I mean, that would be a valid sort of tantric way to describe what happens. I wouldn't be against that sort of framework
And it
at
doesn't have
all.
to be like, oh, like I'm cutting the motherfucker. Not that. It's just like you're
Well, that's very
destroying the idea
tantric.
of becoming. Yeah. No, but you know what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that look, when we did our series, I said Doth is Yamataka, so the slayer of death. He literally cuts death's head off, puts it on. It's a big buffalo. So he puts on this big like cow's face and he takes his skin that he flays off his corpse and then wears it. So it is he's slaying, but he is Yama. That's the whole thing. He is the Lord of Death and
I
he's
think
killing himself.
I
So
think
yeah, I
what you
agree.
just described right there, and this is I do think there is some possibility that even the skinwalker idea, I do think goes back to the whole thing of like I'm removing the flesh. I'm not part of
That's
the
what I
flesh.
think. That's what
You
I
know?
think. It
I think
makes more
after I have a magical experience, I myself become a skinwalker because I have now taken on the flesh. I've come back from the spirit. And I'm a fucking skinwalker with bones and fucking convulsing fucking nerves going throughout this world. That's all it is. I know it sounds very blah, but I do think. I mean, if you're a spirit and you're not encapsulated in anything, and all of a sudden you're in a body that's surrounded by skin, keeping you fucking entrapped, it sounds like you're a skinwalker.
I
You
mean,
know?
that would be the Buddhist idea. That would be even the idea of corpse flaying and all that, like that I joke about sometimes. But
But
The
that's
idea
not
is
as
highly
catchy.
conceptual.
It's not really that catchy to sell on YouTube and podcasts. So I guess
No.
it's got to be that obviously has to be something only on Skinwalker Ranch, right? Skinwalkers, you know. But I think there's deeper shit to that. I mean, you're even telling how you. There's just things where showing people removing skin. I mean, fucking Silence of the Lambs, the motherfuckers cutting skin off of people.
I mean, that is very interesting, isn't it? Like it
Even
is
the
because he's
Texas
trying to
Chainsaw Massacre, I
become.
think, is all showing that shit. I swear to God.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I also think what Solar just said was interesting. Trampling down death by death, esoteric knowledge hidden within exoteric liturgy. This is like Buddhism, is what he basically just said. Because that's the idea, is that you'll be able to take normative texts like the Pranaparamita Sutras, and from those you'll be able to derive secret knowledge. So you'll be able to derive death right from the wisdom text itself. And with that wisdom, you can then move forward and go up the tree into understanding. So Saturn. So been a very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, not to get into it too much, even with it might have sounded weird when I said Silence of the Lambs, but I mean,
No,
if you think
not at
about
all.
that, it's a movie with a fucking moth. So now you get the whole death and rebirth, whole rising from the ashes, and you got this guy who wants, slaying people, and obviously needs skin for when he's done. Well, when you fucking kill everybody and then kill yourself, you need a body to come back to.
Maybe he was a Calvinist and maybe he just didn't understand the magical experience. He took it so literally. We were joking about this before recording, but someone who just jokes, they don't understand the magical experience. They take it so literally.
Yeah.
He starts becoming a serial killer.
Yeah, right. Fucked it all up. All right, so yeah, we got Metatron. Then you also have for the angelic order. I don't even know. Child Ha-Kadash or whatever. The holy living creatures. Those are supposed to be. These are high celestial beings described in biblical visions, like Ezekiel's vision. And this is something that people might actually have heard before. I think it's on tarot cards. I think it's on Crowley cards. These are the high celestial beings described in biblical visions as the four-faced creatures supporting God's throne. They're often depicted as the four cherubic creatures: the bull, the lion, the eagle, and man. Gareth Knight explains that these four form of the angelic choir of Kether, embodying the primordial eternal elemental powers. Sorry, I fucked that all. He explains that he believes that the four of those are embodying the primal elemental powers in their archetypal form, which is kind of how I think Crowley had used it on his card in a sense. But yeah, I mean, even there you get. I know Barrios talked about it. Some of these symbols have come up, multiple times on the show. But like, yeah, these are ascribed with, I guess, Kether in a sense with the angelic order.
I agree with that. I agree that there is sort of that expression is with the four animals. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's iconography to sort of correlate to that. And I also think that the Thoth deck is probably the best. I know this is very contentious, and I'm not a natural tarot card reader in any way, nor do I know Kabbalah through tarot, but I have used a Thoth deck for a long time, off and on. And although the Rider-Waite deck is really good, I have to say that there's something much deeper about the Thoth deck, in my opinion.
No, I do. Yeah, I do actually. I do need to get myself a deck of that. I actually bought when I first got to North Carolina a few months ago. I checked out there's like three occult shops within like 10 minutes from me. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I went to one of them and they had the tarot deck that Lux used to use in the Golden Dawn that was like black and white. That's fucking hard to find, kind of. I grabbed that, and that one I actually had wanted to think about covering it because like the major arcana, if you were to see things that I point out a lot that have to do with eyeball symbolism, it's like, yo, that shit is literally all over that deck. Like I was like, yo, this might actually be like more symbolic towards eyeball shit. But the Thoth deck, I do think that that's it. Yeah, I am impressed with that deck. I'll have to say it. It is what it is.
I mean, something that's good is good, right? That's it.
It is very interesting. There's a lot of. I honestly think there's in that Thoth deck. I think you're seeing light reflection. Yeah. I think you're seeing the eyeballs, and I think you're seeing the brain. That's I know people don't want to give that dude credit.
It looks like crystalline, right? Like a lot of the paintings are very like through crystals, like as light would through. You see the little
trapezoids even.
Card.
Fucking magician card looks like he's blasting off through light, right?
I mean, it does. The whole thing is very whoever did it, whether it's Crowley or someone else, like whoever arranged those cards, it's very good Kabbalah. I like it a lot. I think it depicts something. I think preserves something, and I think it's even if you're not like for me, I'm not interested in tarot that much, but I think for meditation reasons, I think the Tomberg stuff, a lot of the more OG guys, they do the Tomberg meditations with the Toth deck, and I think it actually makes sense.
Yes, yes, and Rebirth of the World, correct. When they do show those, sorry, Jen, when they do show those, they are the cardinal points. Yeah. You know what? I had even wondered about those animals or the things that they choose. This would be too much to get into to try to even probably figure out right now on the fly, but just going by them. I mean, you have man, you have eagle, and birds see differently. They're also like higher up. I mean, obviously they spend time in the air and the skies. With the bull and the lion, I'm just wondering, is there like, I guarantee you there's some sort of like deep symbolism between that, like even their makeup or their place in the world, you know, or even I would say specific things about their physiology. I think might actually even be reasons why they're used.
I agree with you. I think it's physiological or formations of like I tend to think of everything as like words, like they're trying to represent like primordial sounds or words, and they
Mm.
might do it in a specific way. Now, Mario obviously looks at everything through astrotheology. So I don't think either way is wrong. I think actually maybe both of them are
Oh, I think you need
valid in
both.
a way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. So it's just like depends on how you look at it because I think that there are relations for both. And I think there's an argument to be made for both, and including them both is smarter. I agree.
The virtue for this sphere, the attainment, the realization of this union and fulfillment of spiritual purpose. I think if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, Jim, but I think Kether may be the only sphere with no vice because it's supposed to be, I guess, perfect or an extent, or it exists beyond duality. So I guess there is no really right or wrong at that point. Maybe I don't know.
That is definitely a one way to understand it. That's definitely one way to even express it is like you're beyond dualities. And like again, to reference the series is like Chinnamasta. She stands upon herself. She's above herself, above lust, particularly, but it can be understood to be all kinds of mind poisons, of which there are five. So but she specifically, excuse me, stands on lust. So I just think, or carnal desire, you could say. Um, so I agree with you. I think that there is no virtue, but I think, or no vice, excuse me. But I also think it's like how you understand it. Do you take it in that way that you said, where you're beyond good and evil? And then some people, obviously modern occultists, interpret that as being like, whatever, all the things I do as after I come back down are sort of like in this range of beyond good and evil. Or do you understand that to be like non-duality in your consciousness? So I would say that there's a paradox, but I agree that there's not a vice.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes and I got I got lost. Yeah, and then you know what? Unfortunately, for some reason, I started having the other colors, and I guess maybe I just didn't put them all in. But I was gonna get into Ibrea. That one is normally considered with brilliance, pure white brilliance, and then at some point there is oh yeah, and then Asaya, that's the pure light, is often shown with a slight differentiation, and that is white flecked with gold, like you had mentioned before. So even the colors change throughout those four worlds. For me, and again, like I just do want to mention it, if you go look at the tree of life, I mean, you do basically see at the top sphere, it comes down into the two pillars and then drops down. And then if you see, this from Kether down the middle pillar, it drops all the way down. So something I am just trying to really, I guess, hammer in there is that it is within every sphere as well, in my opinion. I would even say sometimes like Kether, I would look at that as fuck. I just lost my train of thought.
That's why you have me, Nick.
Yeah, fuck. I just had something too, and I was like, oh fuck. And it was something I've been wanting to say over and over again. Totally forgot. Just slipped out of my head like that. What the fuck?
It
Sorry.
happens.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
don't be sorry. It's okay. Well, I agree with you. I think that there's also an element of Kether that is in every supper. I think that's what you were kind of saying. Like, there's an element of like deep profound, almost ineffable love. And so if you've had that, I think it almost is beyond like articulation. So it becomes this kind of like nebulous game. Like, what do you really experience? How do you describe what you really experience? And Kether is sort of like innumerable in that way. It's just like so full of something so beyond what we could even use words to describe, like how the light, exactly like what you said. There is like I don't know, I think of it as like a eclipse before a horizon.
Yeah. It's a really, and I was going to use this, and this is part of where I was going. I don't want to try to lose it again. Even like you said, the eclipse and stuff. I would even say with Kether, I mean, that's kind of like light before there's like even sound to it, because sound travels slower than light, or light travels faster than sound. I know to break it down into not maybe it doesn't sound as wild or crazy, but I mean, I do think even an extent, again, how I even use the crystal and how it shows all these colors. Could Kether literally be just that flash of light of existence, something coming into existence that can eventually, like you said, at birth, you get that flash of light because that sperm, that one made it into the zero. And now there's the flash of light, and something can eventually take form and then be spit out into this world. Is that kind of like Kether, that light flash, and then all that stuff ingests for 9 months and then gets shit out into Malkuth when it's done.
I mean, that's definitely one way that people have thought about it. Is that like, like some neo-Gnostics definitely think like, oh yeah, we are
that. Don't say that.
I'm sorry.
I'm calling us Nazis already. Fuck.
Well, some people believe that through that expression of light, and then it's like into the lower forces, which is sound, exactly what Nick said. That makes complete sense. It like reverberates. People like talk about Yesod being like a kind of reverberating crystal, but not maybe of the same clarity as Kether. That's an interesting way to think about it. Yeah, so it reverberates at our lower frequency. And yeah, I think so. We then exist at a lower frequency, but try and give it like a more optimistic, I guess, or utopian, or maybe, as the kids say, Kether maxing idea that, yeah, it doesn't matter if we're in the lower world, we still try and go up. I don't know, just to give people like a little. People seem to want impetus to like they want to be passive agents of like astrology or magic, and I'm like, no, you should take a more active role. So regardless of how we appear in the world, we should still try and climb.
One thing I did want to mention too, about Kether, how I even like, even mentioned like the whole birth thing. I even find that interesting. Again, this is only going by my experience. Maybe my experience is bullshit. Maybe it was just, something fucking happened in my brain and I just lost it. But again, with that whole eclipse thing, like I'm talking about that flash of light, and it's like, it's kind of interesting how you come into a flash of light around a circle. And if that is me crossing the abyss, I mean, you're going out seeing the same shit.
I mean, this is the thing, and then maybe this is a good segue into Binah, is that constriction of light, you could say around the birth canal, like when you're sort of perceiving it coming outwards, or when you're kind of going inwards into a death experience, that kind of restriction of light is Binah. So it's sort of I've heard other people describe it in a similar way, or as a pinpoint camera. It sort of gives the light contour and meaning.
That is a really good point. I just want to throw this in there before I forget. This is even something I've even thought about with Janus, because I swear, and I do think Janus falls on Chokmah. My experience, I am getting a white light and then a black sphere, and eventually they pull apart. Janus has been associated with doors and hinges. Well, if you have a hinge or a door or something like that, you're going to swing that fucking black sphere away from that fucking white one. I know this may sound crazy.
It doesn't. It makes complete sense.
Even if you think about it on the picture on the tree, the way it's that could look like that sounds nutty, but
It
And
doesn't. It really doesn't. This is a really good way to express like what happens. It's like the light drops down from Kether, as you said. It goes through Chokmah. You could say this is where like the soul, like what people think they are, that sort of is like there, but it's not in a body yet. It's
yeah,
just like
you
the
come to face with God is the expression there. So if you even think about it, you're God thinking this is me.
right. And then you go into form. Then you go into the
Yes.
darkness,
You
right?
have the
So
idea of okay,
it totally makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, you see yourself, and then beyond, in my opinion, you're getting into thoughts, and then that's where you start compiling what you think you just looked at, and that's what you become. Or something that
No, absolutely. This makes sense even in the Sailor Moon clips I chose because you'll see, like, in their distinct powers that they do kind of embody these Sephirotic concepts. Like that they'll have sort of like expressions, like how I always think of Hokmah, like, yes, I agree with you, Janice, 100%. It's like a well, like I think it's Odin. So I've said this before, so it's
I think
no
you are. I
surprise.
think perfect for that. Perfect for that, Odin.
It's like it's not expression, it can be also smoky, meaning that you can't tell what's around it. It's, like, very hard to discern. It doesn't have good understanding, but it can be also be like a fool. Like, the Fool's card in tarot is a really good way to express that. It's like a guy, he's gonna step off the abyss, but he doesn't really know he's already climbing to the higher mountain. He doesn't really need to drop off, right? But he's not really also paying attention. So, it's kind of a fool in the most essential way, and I think that it confuses a lot of people to think that that is like number one, but Hokmah is really two. And so I do think that that is a point of, Pythagoras preferred the two, and it makes sense in Buddhism as well. We would say that there's like more of a dyad, but we also have a flexible system. Sometimes we say there's like a pentad or eight or whoever, it doesn't matter really, but we're more like there's more flexibility, but if you're more Pythagorean, you would prefer the two. And I do understand that. And so I could see where people are drawing like a face of God. So I think that Janus thing is perfect because it is kind of like a mask of God, like a Mahavishnu who wears 1,008 faces.
Mm. Mm. And it's interesting that you did mention the Fool. That is the card that connects to Chokmah.
One of the few that I actually know because I did an anime series with Monty on the anime's forgetting, leaving me 100%. Oh, D Gray Man, and so he is a fool card. Like it's the motif throughout the entire anime. He like owns a fool card. He has like the clown sort of tattooed on his eyebrow. He uses like fool card colors, and so it completely makes sense to like everything you're saying. So I remembered it. So it's not me being good at tarot. I'll just admit I learned that for that episode, so it just stayed with
That's awesome. I learned more about tarot because I've decided to cover it on the show than I did prior in some ways, believe it or not. So, you want to play one of those videos? So
me. Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, I think this is the first one after the one that didn't work. All right, so here we go. Bring up the volume a little bit.
It's not her transformation. I just want to say that. That's interesting. Although there are colors that are interesting, it's really her attacks that are interesting that I think you'll find also interesting.
Well, I find her with the green and red is always interesting. I mean, this is like two female kind of colors in the tree.
I agree. So her attack's called Dead Screen. And one of the videos that it does work is going to have a line from Sailor Saturn, and she's going, "I am the time of silence." I should have waited until you could put it up to say it because I was like, "Oh, Nick will love this." But it is interesting because they always work together. So I like to say that Pluto is at Dath, and like those are the interrelationship. Now, some people don't like this, and I'm totally fine with that. I actually think that there could be a flexibility between Uranus and Pluto. Like I think you could have Pluto at Kether or Pluto at Dath, depending on maybe the Aeon or depending on the system you're using. I think there's both ideas that are okay. So, but I like Pluto because, as you see, she has a key that's her wand, and the key is topped with a heart. So you could say love is the cause of knowledge in a very real way. And she opens the gateway, the threshold, which is also part of what the mythos of Dath, we could say, is the threshold to the abyssal world or to the Klipa. Although you can also say this about the moon, about Yesod. You can say there's a secret path there that goes right to death. Some people have said that. I agree with that actually as well. And so in the anime, what is really interesting is there is a little girl, a princess of the Klipas, you could say, who Sailor Pluto takes as under her wing. So very interesting Yesod or a moon, a lunar Pluto connection, I think, in her kind of iconography. And so I would say that that's Dath in more of a, if you're just doing like a more teaching people like the general ideas of the Sephira, I like Pluto with Dath. And I think that she actually correlates really well. And I think that the lady who did it was really into tarot. And so through tarot, I think she also understands a lot of Kabbalah as well.
Nice. Did you want me to pull up another one, or
Yeah,
did you?
sure. Let's do another one. Yeah, let's if you're cool with it.
Yeah. Let me just.
Okay.
Actually left them playing, so now it's like when I originally pulled them up, they're not even on the same video, so I gotta go on chat and pull it back up again. You know, like my YouTube will just start playing after another thing.
Oh yeah, autoplay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So now they're not on the same video anymore. All right, here we go. I'm gonna switch it over now, and then maybe after this we'll get into Chokmah a little bit more. Yeah, we might actually not be able to even get to all three spheres, unfortunately. Sorry, I started late.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Share this.
Next time we'll hit it hard with Benna.
Yeah. I mean, totally honest with you, people like we could probably do one show per sphere, but it's just like, you know, who wants to do 10 shows?
I love doing long form series. I think it's great.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Uh-oh. So this is Sailor Uranus, and so I like this for Kether. You can see she's bringing the polarities in together, the fire of Gevra and the lightning of Jupiter. This is Sailor Neptune. She's doing the dreamlike ocean, so that's her attack is like music. It's kind of like a sleeping in the supernal ocean, as I've often said. So I think that the both of the attacks actually make sense. And it's also interesting because Sailor Uranus is a lesbian. So she is able to defy convention. So you could say that she's post-conceptual. It's kind of interesting.
I do think that is interesting. Huh.
Someone thought about it, is what I'm saying. It was a thoughtful, deliberate way to reconcile the paradox of not having a male character fill it, I think. And because I would assign that to be more of a masculine energy. Now, obviously, I said that can be both, but I do think that there is maybe a more masculine energy or a more unified kind of vision, not hermaphrodite. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying a more unified vision. Maybe it's God and his wife together. And so I think that that's a more interesting way, but I think this is also a valid way because they thought through it and they were like, okay, how do we reconcile this kind of paradox that arrives as only one character? So then she also is she's dating Sailor Neptune, so Chokmah. So it would give them an inherent sort of natural connection. And just like the sort of supernal triad, well, Binah's really important for everyone else, but the other two are sort of ineffable in a ways. So they're kind of in and out of the show as well. So it's kind of interesting in that way that they kind of like appear and not appear. They're there and they're not there. Sometimes the other girls think about them and they don't really know what to make of it. Some of them are partially attracted to them. Some of them are kind of repulsed in a way. And I think that also is like a Kabbalistic choice. It's like the plus and the ultra. Like, are they magnetizing them in or magnetizing them away?
I like that with the magnetism. Nice. You want to go over to Chokmah now, I guess?
Yeah, let's do Chokmah since we just kind of hit on it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with the supernal triad, it's kind of like hard to talk about one without like kind of incorporating the other ones.
That's what I think they're interesting is that they're dating. So you would have Kether and Chokmah in like a perpetual sort of duality almost. Hopefully, right? Exactly. And so Chokmah is really interesting. It's gray, it can be turquoise, it can be white is a perfectly fine way to think about it, but that's at the higher levels. But you could also say, I was talking about this with someone today, is like it can also be if you look at Mother Teresa,
Ooh.
that would be a really good way to understand Chokmah because it is like a widow. This is a very tantric kind of archetype, but it's someone who's kind of outside of society, outside of convention, but they have a role, you could say. They're sort of like a vessel for greater wisdom, hopefully. Like transcendental wisdom, you could say. Like Mother Teresa's whole thing was like to take suffering and to sort of like make grace out of it. Now, in the tantric way to understand the Sephra, I would say that this produces a lot of confusion for people. It tends to be very outside. Oh, I'm outside the flesh, so I am truly the beast. But You're not quite outside of form. So if you get stuck there, you're still getting stuck in a particular kind of ego. But it is considered to be the ineffable expression of wisdom. So more European systems like would prefer a masculine sort of expression of that, so you often hear about that. But in Dharma and Eastern wisdom systems, they prefer wisdom is always a female, always, always. Wisdom is pretty much synonymous with like a feminine element. So I would say that there's both, or you could say the tantric way is that they're reconciled because she's a widow. So she did have a husband, but he's peace out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I was gonna add. I lost that one again too. So this is what happens when I don't get stoned. I actually haven't. I'm totally sober. Surprising, right? That's because my vaporizer broke. I have to go get one after the show. I realized at 4:30 it was broke. I was like, I can't leave. I was like, I can't leave. We'll be late, and we started at fucking 5:30 anyway. Uh, that was my fault from bullshitting. Chokmah. This is what I was thinking. Interesting about the ego. Because like even in Chokmah, I'll read what I have and maybe that will well, you know what, I probably lost what I was looking at. With Chokmah, it's like almost like you kind of start to what I was reading and how I looked at it too, you almost start to indifferentiate yourself from uh from the source. Again, like I would even think that's maybe even because White Janus is there, like whatever, or the experiences face to face with God. Is that it does say in Chokmah from multiple people's things that like that's when you start to like separate yourself from the experience, I guess, or separate yourself from the all to make yourself different from everything else. And I could see that being the ego. And like I've even mentioned in my experience, whenever I've crossed the abyss, if it's really happening, anytime I start thinking of myself, it ends. When I start wondering where I am or what I am or where, what's going on. As soon as I really start thinking about, well, I guess, whatever, it's over. And I do think that's because I'm separating myself from the experience. Though. I'm like, I'm like trying to look at it from outside.
I totally agree with you, Nick. And I also think that one thing I didn't say about color that I've talked about before that other people actually messaged me and were like, I've never heard anyone say this before, but I think I've actually heard you say it before. But silver tinseling. This is something that I personally I don't know if you want to say experienced or just associate maybe in a deeper way with that Sephira, but I always thought of it as silver tinseling. So, but I also agree that it can be understood in sort of the like Nick was talking about the diffusive expression of light through crystal. Well, if you go down to Chokmah, you're not in crystal anymore. You're in smoke or in flux. So
Oh,
maybe you could say that you're like a cumulus cloud, like almost pristine, pure white cloud as far as you can see, and then the cloud kind of pushes over the sun, it expresses outwards, and there's kind of like a when light passes through kind of the water vapor, it's not a rainbow, but there's something multivariant about it, and I think that that's also part of Hokmah. And I think that's a good way to understand, like, are we separating ourselves from the infinite sky? Because that's kind of the more traditional Kabbalah, Jewish Kabbalah idea is like, are we separating ourselves from God's mercy or God's love or God's wisdom in this particular case, or are we like a willing recipient of it?
oh, that's the question, man. Honestly, I think like for me myself too, that is a big thing that I have actually wondered about when you start looking at the tree. What is the reasoning from that separation? Is it by choice or by force? It's just a very, I don't know. It's like I wish I could go back to when this originally happened and see, like, because it's like, dude, if I was given the choice, what the fuck say? Like, fuck, stay where you are. It's much more nicer out there.
Well, I think that's
Or it's
an
like I'm
interesting.
gonna go somewhere shitty to remember how good I got it now. Like, is that what's going on? Because I got the joke. I can go home now. I'm good.
Well, I think that is an interesting way to think of the tree in general. Is like, you don't want to end up on either polarity. You don't want to end up on the extremities of the tree. You want to end up in synthesis and also, well, I would say you'd also end up in rectification both, because obviously Buddhism places a great emphasis on that, but not everybody does. But you could say that, okay, the example I always give of Rosicrucianism and Catholicism, like they have a very Tiphoretic, they always focus on the heart and the the sacred heart with the crown, and it's flaming and it's golden, and he was pointing to it, so he's like, prepare your heart, like with these Tiphoratic qualities, to prepare your consciousness to go higher, receive the Holy Spirit or whatever. So I think it's like there's a duality in that. I think that it's like people get lost in, because like the experience is nothing like really how we speak about it in a way. It's like we're talking about it like this is one part of it, one part of it, one part of it, but it for me anyway was a lot more um I don't know, it was, like, not so chronological. It was, like, the different experiences happen in different places. So, I just think that, people get confused, and that's part of what Nick's talking about, is, like, this separation from source, like, looking at yourself as a separate being, or already embodying that high quality of source, but you're actually in the lower world, so you can't possibly be ineffable. That's one idea.
I like that. And not to get into the weird stuff here, but like even with Chokmah, yeah, I'm gonna get into the eyeball and brain shit. The whole gray thing, I've even wondered if that has anything to do with gray matter. Uh, in the brain, and like the orphanim is associated. This is what I was gonna get into. The orphanim is associated with Chokmah, and I have often thought the orphanim might actually be your optic nerve. Because when you cut open the optic nerve and start looking at it diagonally, it does kind of like almost looks like a pizza, or even like the Wheel of Fortune. And again, with the wheels and just something circular, and it has to do with sight, and the orphanum's got eyes all over it. I just have wondered about that, and it's just at that point, is that like if you want to start seeing what's going on with your brain and your eye, I guess at that point, like electricity or light, depending on which way you're seeing it, you know, go on in your brain. If you're looking at it, I guess from like your brain out to your eyes, or from your eyes into your brain, you will see, I guess, like electricity or light that then is starting to be pushed into the optic nerve and actually being condensed and like kind of like being separate from everything that was just. That's a little bit much, but I have wondered, like, if you want to start getting into physiology part of it, which again, I think just like the trivium or whatever, like we were saying before, how there's like so many different layers to occult symbolism. I just think this is one of the parts, and I
The
do think
biology part is undeniable.
I
Undeniable part of it.
even the whole thing with the colors, like I was saying before, I even think the whole idea of light reflection and frequencies and all that shit is all in the tree.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Nick, because obviously a lot of the medieval occultists, which many of whom you've covered, they have like mapped the tree onto the Adam Kadmon, onto sort of or the Christ figure, or whomever, the Enoch or the Seth or the Shem, or whomever they want to call it. They have mapped on the tree to the thing. So you can look at it through a level of correspondences. Like we have talked about doctrine of signatures related to plants, but that's just a very minute example, like a very minute way to discuss the same things. Like the same, there's planetary implications, planetary relationships with the organs. Then we can say there are Sephirotic also implications or relationships. So I think it's all like exactly what you're saying. I think that the biology layer is a really interesting layer because when you were saying that the sort of electricity or the lightning around the gray matter, there's something there. I think for me,
Yeah,
I
because
agree
like
with
you
that.
get into your pineal gland and like the electricity going up and out of your eyes and over there, like I don't know if you want to start looking at things and like what's actually going on. In my opinion, you can see it in an extent.
Well, it's described as smoky and gray in tantra. So what produces smoke? Flux, like has to be burning, but it's not burning, as in like it's not actively inflamed, but it's some kind of electrical process, right?
Yeah, and then like,
So
and then if you want to get into like, again the gray matter or whatever, Janus goes with that symbol of if you. This is another reason why I look at it that way. At what point our brain is actually female, and then the male is interdicted into it. And you will even see that I think with the Janus and Janus, sometimes it's not always a male and male. It's a male and female, and I do think that could even be showing you the whole brain and everything being
I
formed.
agree with you. I think it's a dualistic, it's not the most dualistic Sephira in the terms of like what is presented, like the klipas, like the sort of misunderstandings that the magician or the meditator, whomever it is, they're passing through the densities, and then you'll get these different kinds of perceptions, feelings, understandings, but there's also misunderstandings that can happen. And so I think that this is one of those things. It's like a dualism, and so everything in that Sephira reinforces this idea of dualities. And it's hard, maybe Sephira to reconcile as well. And I've heard other people talk about this, and maybe this is why it's such a fascination for like contemporary, especially like left-hand path occultists, because they find it so impenetrable. But I think it's just you just have to say this is just the subconscious layer, and it's expressing itself in the fucked up ways that I think of the world, not necessarily how they are. And once you kind of can say that, you can kind of be like, okay, it's not everything is how I imagine it to be.
Yeah, it's not what I thought it was. Like that. You know what I was thinking? We're not gonna wrap it up yet. I'll say maybe we'll go like another 10 minutes if you don't mind.
Of course.
If we have to talk about Chockmah more, we can next episode. But I was thinking, and this is because I'll be totally honest with you. I'm coming out in a minute. When I first started getting into the Kabbalah, from my opinion, or from what I learned, it was never really originally on the tree. So for me, I was just like, I'm just gonna stick with the 10. I have looked into it, and obviously it's in books, but I've never paid it as much mind. I'm thinking, well, again, I haven't paid it as much attention as every other sphere, put it that way. I'm thinking maybe, even though kind of out of the supernal triad, maybe next episode we will actually cover Binah and Dot, even though it's, you know what I'm saying, to make up for 2 spheres in that episode instead of 1. So maybe we can
I
do next show. We'll cover it.
I agree. I agree because really, if you want to think of it, like Bina draws sort of Dath into activity, you could say.
Well, again,
Because
like
Dath,
even the way I say, I think Doth is kind of understanding what the fuck just happened when you crossed over. It's all connected, in a sense.
it's the way to understand what happens when you cross. Like to relate to it, right? To give context and contour, definition. But you don't wanna be at the Hode-like definition where you don't know the thing, like, you don't
Yeah.
fundamentally know what happened, you just are describing it, like, randomly with words that you may or may not fully understand, but then once you're doing the Binah sort of delineation of events, you're kind of putting it into a grammatical structure and order, and you're being intentional in your will, so that's very also magical, so that's why, like, I know Nick likes the Sephira, I like the Sephira, Binah is really so important, but it also has a relationship with Doth. So I agree with you, Nick. But I agree. It doesn't you're fine. People are fine with the 10. If you're interested in Kenneth Grant and like playing around with Doth, Doth is always there. So it's not going anywhere, is what I'm saying. So if you don't particularly focus on it, it's fine. You're gonna eventually come to that place, hopefully.
Yeah, I was more interested actually in Doth again after I had my experience. Because I knew that it was associated with knowing, and I was like, well, I feel like there's things I know now. And I was like, oh wait. So like it was something that spurred my attention more after the fact, unfortunately. But Yeah, I figured maybe we could do that in the next episode. We'll do Binah and so just keep it going. Another thing I wanted to say, not to get off of this, to get back a little bit back to Chokmah. Again, like even when I brought up the Wheel of Fortune, there's no planet associated with Chokmah, but the Zodiac is. And again, it's just another wheel with lines through it. Again, I was saying if you cut the optic nerve down, like like you're slicing like a salami stick, you cut it down that way. It does look like it even has like the thick layer around it. It's like, it's the crust of a pizza. Like, or like those flowers. It's a lot on that Golden Dawn deck. In my opinion, there is tons and tons of optic nerve symbolism on there. It's like these circular things that almost kind of look like flowers, and they have this thick outer edge. I've shown it plenty of times in like architecture, like Freemasonry, especially Catholic churches have that shit all over the place. I do think it might actually be the optic nerve. So again, I'm just saying, relating the whole Zodiac. I wonder again with like Wheel of Fortune type symbolism. I know Wheel of Fortune would probably go around chess head, but I mean, that's right above that is Chokmah. You're already there.
Well, you can say that the Chokmah is the highest expression, right? So, like, there's obviously an innate relationship between Hesed and Chokmah right there. So maybe you say that all the things, like a more Jewish way to understand it would be like you're bringing all those things that you've learned that are expressed in the world. So Jupiter is and Hesed is there. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people have this preference for that Sephira because it's infinite in its expanse. Kind of, you can double the four every time. That's kind of the idea. And so, but once you get into Chokmah, you kind of are more, you're more centered, you're more you've lived your life, you've been like a master Kabbalist or a student or whatever for many decades, and so you've kind of come into this you're a wizened elder. So that's also like a good archetype sort of to understand it as well, and it gives you kind of I've always likened it to the Desert Fathers. So Nick's talking about Catholicism. So like I think of that Chokmah as very like the Desert Fathers. It's like guys in hemp linen robes, often gray, right? They're out in the desert and they're kind of meditating and having these Sephirotic experiences and trying to make sense of it. And they're also they're not eating very much. There's like honey and locusts and like, whatever. And so it is like the ultimate asceticism in a way. And it's kind of like the ultimate, you're seeking for duality, you're seeking for unity, but you're doing it in the most dualistic sort of separating yourself from your physical body. You're trying to like annihilate the self almost.
What's really interesting? If we want to go back into this whole thing, I'm sorry to bring it back to the eyeballs again.
No, that's okay. I like this.
You want to think about Chokmah, you have one optic nerve with two eyes. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's only one optic nerve in each eye, but you are kind of getting one, but duality. You're one eye, the optic nerve is it's only one of them, but yet it's being done in two eyes. You know what I'm saying? That sounds like weird. It's even it's if you look at what an optic nerve looks like, it looks like a flaccid hanging dick. I'm not trying to make up for perverted shit, but in my opinion, that is actually phallic symbolism. Is actually I do think is possibly showing the optic nerve, and or it even looks like a light switch just hanging down. Now you want to flip that shit on, tickle that Scarlet Horse fancy. She's turned on all the time. You'll get what the fuck you want.
That's right. So what you said is so interesting, Nick, because there is even a tantric like icon where Shiva, well, it's not really Shiva, but it's by Rava, and he's nude like that, and it's not ithophalic, meaning it's not erect. And so it is just like the shape you described, and he's non-generative. And that is also the equivalent of the form that you could map into Chokmah. So I think it's really interesting that you say that it's kind of the non-generative father.
Yeah, even in Minerval. This is sound crazy. At Minerval, I actually think when you're going through that initiation, you are actually I think it's showing you shit from the eyeball. It's just my opinion. And the God name is even on. I know it sounds cheesy, but like I was saying before, you just got to flip that switch on. I mean, that's the God name. And I do think they're telling you that after they pump your thumb fucking 12 times. And there's 12 cranial nerves, and one of them's the optic nerve in front of a fucking tent that looks just like it. So it's just like, I do think there's something to that. And the whole thing, I mean, technically, if you want to look at the Gnostic mass, it can be taken as that the priest is just trying to turn on or get the priestess off, but he's not using his dick. You just start to wonder, like, is there actually symbolism behind some of this sexual stuff? Because in my opinion, one of the best ways to hide shit is make it sexual and make it look satanic.
Well, that's the preferred. Every magician in our like the last 60, 70, maybe 80 years has preferred this. Sometimes, not everybody, but a lot of people have preferred this tactic is to hide like real knowledge under the superficial density of maybe you could say perversion, inversion, or whatever you want to call it, like a true klipa, like a true misunderstanding of what the actual knowledge is. It's a way to hide it and obscure it, which is interesting because that is also the klipa of Saturn. People love that, like the Saturn moon matrix, like the black cube of Saturn stuff. Well, the interestingly to occult something is the klipa of Saturn. Actually, Saturn is to come into understanding, or bina is the proper way, is to come into understanding rather than obscure things before people. However, that doesn't mean that you get to reveal all secrets, of course, but I think that's about what Chokmah is. It's a little trickstery. Like that's how they would kind of look at it in Tantra is or even the normie kind of Hinduism. They would say it's like the sleeping god, the supernal god. He exists on the world ocean. He's dreaming of his life in the real world, but he's not really God. He's dreaming. So his sort of soul, if you want to call it that, takes birth into the world of form, and
Mhm.
so he doesn't want that to end. He loves the dream. He loves the Leela. And so
Like
he
that.
hates nothing else. He hates nothing else than to be sort of either you could say killed, quote unquote, or sort of awakened.
Oh, and real quick, because I didn't want to forget this. I was paying attention to what you're saying. I just want to throw this in because I was thinking about it and I was like, I forgot to say this prior. Janus is associated with pillars, correctly? Correct? I mean, I think you've heard that yourself too, of the two pillars, or there's things that are designed.
That is what other researchers have asserted. So I have to say that as far as I know, that is true.
Yeah, again, if I'm going on about these optic nerves, I mean, it's two fucking it looks like a one hanging in a zero in your eyeball. You got two of them. It looks like pillars to me too. If you want to start looking at it like that, I mean, I may be grabbing for shit here, but
I don't think you are at all. I think it makes complete sense. I mean, even the Odin mythos, it's like he's missing an eye. Like
and
I
he's
know I make
associated with
fun of them
fucking
all the
lightning,
time,
isn't he?
but
Isn't he
yes. Well,
associated with lightning?
sometimes. So some people say that he is, and some people say he isn't. Obviously, this is well beyond my area of expertise, but certainly there is a association of him with this. Obviously, we said this of the Sephira, but then also he does correlate in a lot of ways. Like he wears a gray robe. He's an ascetic, like a desert father almost, except maybe like the Hyperborean northern version of a desert father, and he's non-generative. So it fits a lot of these sort of just archetypically, like what Nick was saying before. Like magic is really about archetypes. It's not about people get lost on like the god names, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I must do this altar to this goetic or this deity or this thing. But really, those are just archetypal sort of layers or vessels that contain deeper ideas, just like the sex stuff. And so or the satanic stuff, like that's also like a perfectly synonymous way, like sexual and satanic, like
You had
SS. That's
everything.
like a perfect way to say it. Yeah, people do dumb shit because they want to trip up other people. That's a real thing. And then also they want to sort of guard it against people actually accessing what is deeper knowledge. So dumb people will see the sort of external presentation and be like, this is what I have to do. And I agree that sometimes the magical or Sephirotic experiences can be very confusing. Not necessarily confusing in like a dark way or a bad way, but sometimes we don't always like fully understand the things that we see. And so I understand why people start to obsess about like clipolithic things or darkness or the carnal ground or the, as we did Nick, the series with the ICP guys.
Yeah.
You know, they have the dark carnival and it's like all the, it's a bit, it's like hyper focused on the denizens, excuse me, of the carnal ground. There's no kind of luminosity at the end. And so sometimes people get stuck in that kind of like, you could say like the actual density, like the actual, like, I feel like this is what something is, instead of being, you don't have to be a hermeticist, but it's a, maybe an interesting way to think of it is like you want to travel like the word rather than stay fixed in one
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. I agree with that. But and it's fun. I don't even know how to say this. There's plenty of people that if it wasn't for this misunderstanding, they wouldn't have a podcast. Just keep it totally real.
Well, that's why I brought it up, Nick, because it's something you and I have discussed. It's like not a secret that there are people that would rather obscure, use the klipa of Bina, and probably knowingly, to be honest with you. I
There was,
think, at least I think so.
there was nobody will remember this, and I'm sure that the 10 people that saw it probably have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about because it's so old. But there was like a time, I'm not going to mention names, where somebody was getting harassed by, not harassed, but their cultists were kind of like shit talking somebody that I know in the community. And one of them had like literally said to him, like, if it wasn't for like horrible, fucked up shit, you would have nothing to peddle to your listeners. Like, you actually pimp like horrible shit that you sell to your listeners. And I really didn't get it then because I was just like, oh, fuck that guy, because I really don't like him because I think he pushes like fake UFO alien shit. But like I said, like, I guess from going through my own growing pains and wanting to change, we wanted to put the show just in a more direction, set direction. I started realizing, like, not so much myself, but other people. I was like, I was like, the total misunderstanding of a lot of this shit is the only thing you have to offer. And all you're doing is like selling hate, fear, and putting sick images into people's minds. So,
So there's something really sicko about what you're saying, actually, is like if people peddle to sell, like they're actually commodifying the sick images and then they're associating it with magic. Magic's really about, as you know, Nick, I'm not saying anything to you, it's really for the episode. It's about liberating your consciousness is the best way I can describe it. It's people who try and limit you in like your deeper understandings or your deeper inquiry into wisdom science. Like wisdom science exists so we can reference it and so we can utilize it if we, if we make that decision for ourselves. It's not, someone shouldn't color your opinion of it just because there have been sick people. There are sick people that do lots of things in lots of different varied sort of ideologies. So,
yeah,
magic is in itself, is there's nothing wrong with it. And so people who,
depends on how it's used.
trade in that, it's unfortunate, and they're doing a metaphysical act, I think, a
Yeah.
negative one.
I don't think people realize how, I don't want to get into it too much, but my honest opinion, people who stay stuck on that stuff, they're just black magicians. Keep it real. It is what it is. I mean, I would consider myself one of, as long as I'm talking and trying to make people believe something, I mean, I would say that's kind of black magic in a sense, but when you're pumping people with fear and hate, like, yo, I hate to say it, like, you're basically just fucking, you're listening to Satan.
I agree with you.
Making you hate shit and fear shit.
I
What
agree
the
with you.
fuck, man?
I agree.
Weird. It's weird. And everybody's fucked up. I don't get that whole thing. It's like, yo, if you got to shit on a motherfucker to make yourself look good, you ain't jack shit yourself. You ain't got no game if you got to call everybody else a CIA operative and a piece of shit so people will listen to you. You ain't got jack shit. You ain't got no game, motherfucker. That's just my opinion. That's like a dude who's got to talk shit about some other chick's man to try to get down her pants. She fucking wants you, she'll come to you. If you got to talk shit about that motherfucker and try to persuade her you a fucking piece of shit, jack shit, you ain't got nothing. And there's a lot of people that are doing that recently, and it's just getting silly. It's getting extremely fucking ignorant and silly. That's just my sorry. I mean, I had a little rant there because it's just like I see a lot of it recently, and it's just fucking disgusting at this point.
It's just funny because I think a lot of the people that peddle that narrative, I think some of them have obvious like occult aesthetic, at least trappings, and I actually think they know a lot more than they
You know what's
think.
interesting? A lot of these people that spit this shit don't tell you what the fuck they believe in, do they?
Well,
They
that's
blame
it
everybody else saying bad, bad, bad. But what the fuck are your beliefs, my man? Nobody knows. I don't know.
What better way
Everybody
to
else is a Satanist,
obscure?
fucking this and that. But what the fuck are you? Weird.
That's
There's a
everything,
lot of
right?
weird shit going on out there recently. Sorry. That's it's facts. Lisa's funny. All right. Facts again, preach. All right. I enough of that. But Chin, I feel like there's probably still more we could talk about with Chokmah. I don't know if maybe we'll I don't want to cram another 5 minutes or 3 minutes in. Maybe we could continue a little bit more on Chokmah and hopefully
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, again, like I was saying, one, I started late.
Sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, we met on time. It's just that we caught up and bullshitted for about a half hour, and whatever. Yeah, I kind of realized I was like, shit, we're kind of cutting it close for like 3 spheres. Because in my opinion, I mean, they are not that all of them aren't worth talking about a lot, but I just feel like the Supernal Triad is like a little bit more to get into. So yeah. So unfortunately, we will continue Chokmah and then Binah and hopefully Doth in the next one, everybody. But Jen, thank you very much. I had a bang. I'll be totally honest with you, I was nervous about doing it because it was just me and you. I've been so accustomed to like 5 people on the screen. And I was like, what am I going to do when I have to take a piss or if the air conditioner gets too cold, hot and cold. So yeah, I am sitting here dying to take a piss. Just to let everybody know. This really turned out great, and I'm in some ways, I'm happy we didn't get too far because I actually would like to continue.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the listeners, the people who caught it, I mean, they were loving it. So, Lisa and a bunch of other people are even saying, Vanessa, a couple other people, they love the conversation. Tara, so. I appreciate you coming on, and I really, really enjoyed the chat. And not to knock other people on the show, but when it comes to Kabbalistic stuff, you're really one of the only few people I can rock with. So, not knocking other people. It's just I think other people on the show would even say that me and you were into the Kabbalah way more than them. So I appreciate being able to have this conversation with you because I could talk Kabbalah for fucking days and days and days, man.
It's a beautiful and amazing thing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate it greatly.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. And thank you everybody for joining as well. And Jen, please let everybody know what your deal is and where they can find all your amazing work.
Sure, I'll keep it super short. Threshold Saints, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you get your podcasts. Gray Lodge, there's a YouTube channel live on X every Friday evening. Check us out. All my co-hosts, Solar, Matt, Joshua the Branch, and Monte Carlo, and we're doing speculative archaeologies this week, so everybody can contribute. Thank you so much, Nick and Lisa, and everybody from the chat. Amazing. I could talk Kabbalah as well for a million years. So everybody should study Kabbalah, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and again, this is something I want to explain. It's something that I don't think people understand. If you were to go get a book on Kabbalah, I don't think there'll be one fucking ritual in there. It is all about how we came into existence and how the fuck you get out of it. There's nothing telling you to go fucking kill a chicken, rape a kid, or to draw a circle. None of that shit's in there. So I highly suggest if you want to get into some deep thinking and ponder about how the fuck did I come into the flesh and how do I have an experience with God, maybe looking into the Kabbalah might be something you look into. Again, thank you, Jen. Again, talking about the Kabbalah, I love it, and always love chopping it up with you. So I think if we stick to it, August 8th, because we picked the 17th for today. I mean, let's just be real. It's, it's a cold number. So we're like, fuck it, let's do it on 7/17. I think we might go for August 8th for the next one. So stay tuned on 8/8. We might come back and continue more Kabbalah. And then until the next one, real quick, just to plug it, and probably in about 15, 20 minutes, which is another reason why I'm cutting it short. We'll be going live on Headless's channel. Check that out. We'll be going live soon. If you happen to have any emails you think you can type up real quick and send them out, send them over. We'll read them. But yeah, check that out. And again, everybody, thank you for jumping in. Really great feedback. I really loved it. And even Leaves of Grass was nice today. Sometimes I've noticed her kind of talk shit. She was actually enjoying it. So I appreciate your nice comments this time, Leaves of Grass. So that's all the next one. Everybody be well. Later.